Protective orders, what they mean and why they are often abused. Protective orders are very commonly abused or overused in a lot of situations. So the main purpose of the actual protection order itself is to protect one person from another person when there's some serious allegations of stalking, harassment, domestic violence. It's meant to keep people away from each other. Now, there's ramifications to violating a protective order. So while a protective order is civil, technically in nature, we kind of constitute it as quasi-criminal. And the reason for that is, if a protective order is put in place, and then that protective order is subsequently violated, then you have criminal charges for invasion of privacy, and you face jail time. Why do we see protective orders oftentimes abused? Well, because a lot of times what happens is you get two people who get in an argument. A lot of times they're domestic partners, exes, and the like. And they get in an argument, it's a bad breakup, it's a bad divorce, whatever it may be, and one party tries to file a protective order against another party. Now, the motive behind the protective order oftentimes is potentially vindictive. A lot of times it is overused in the fact that, hey, I'm just mad at you and I want to file a protective order to prove to you I'm mad. Those are not the basis or proper basis. Again, for a protective order to succeed, there has to be some continual allegations of harassment, stalking, things of that nature, domestic battery, domestic violence. A lot of times you'll see, hey, we got in a fight that one day and I told him to leave and he wouldn't leave. And 3 weeks later, we got in another fight. I told him to leave, he wouldn't leave. And then he showed up at the same grocery store I was at, and now I'm scared. We see those protective orders filed all the time. And quite frankly, that's not enough to have a protective order granted. Now here's a caveat. When a protective order is originally filed by a petitioner, it ends up in front of a judge. And a judge gets to then do a quick review as to whether it meets the statutory minimum requirements for a protective order to be granted. Again, does it reach the minimum standard for it to maybe be granted? In certain instances, a judge will issue a temporary ex parte order of protection if certain elements are met, which means it's granted, but we're going to have a hearing, a trial, to figure out if this protective order actually holds water, has merit, and needs to be in place for 2 years. And this is where most people make a catastrophic error. The petitioner is the person who makes the protective order request against someone else, and then you have the person, the respondent, who's responding to it. It's usually the person who the protective order is supposed to be protecting the other person for. So a lot of times in an ex situation, for example, hey, I'm never going to see her again, I'm never going to see him again, I want no contact with them, who cares? I'm not going to show up, it's not a big deal. Oh, is it a big deal? Because if you don't show up at that trial, that protective order is ultimately going to be granted. If that protective order is granted, even though you don't want to have contact at that moment, how are you going to feel in a month, 2 months, 3 months? What if the person who filed the protective order wants to try to reconcile and get back with you? The problem is, the protective order is a one-way street. So she could reach out to you, he could reach out to you, that's fine. But if you respond, that's a violation. If you violate a no contact order, guess what? That's a criminal offense, invasion of privacy. And you can be looking at potential jail time. So if you don't show up for this protective order hearing, you're essentially giving control of your life for the next 2 years, assuming they don't renew the protective order, to the person who filed the protective order. So if you're facing a protective order, this is your time to fight back. This is your time to say, hey, you know what? I don't want that control. Hey, maybe right now it's okay. I don't want to really talk to you. Fine. But how are you going to feel in the future? Are you comfortable knowing that this person, if they get the protective order against you, is going to essentially control your life for the next 2 years? Hey, he texted me. Okay, well, prosecutor's going to look at it. If they can substantiate it, guess what? They're going to issue a warrant. They're going to come try to find you. You can end up sitting in jail, facing criminal charges, then having to hire a criminal defense attorney at that point to try to undo or to try to help move forward with something that could have been taken care of in the past. So don't be like a lot of people. Hey, I don't want to talk to him. Protective order, no big deal. I'm never going to see him again. No, no, no. Now's the time to fight back. Now's the time to take control of your life back and make sure that you're moving on properly. So you're not just protecting yourself today, you're protecting yourself next month, 3 months from now, a year from now. So if you've been served a protective order, give our office a call, 317-632-3642. We'll go over it with you and figure out the best way to defend to get your life back on track. And remember, always plead the fifth.